Hey guys, today we're going to do a quick introduction to equations. Equations are quite important because we use them in a lot of different subject areas and we also use them all the way throughout mathematics. So it's very important that you understand how equations work and be able to apply them to any given formula. So let's go through equations as an introduction. What is an equation? So an equation basically is an algebraic sentence or statement, and we need to find the numerical value of the pronumeral, whether that be an x or y or whatever pronumeral that is. Now, how do we solve an equation? We solve an equation using inverse operations. The word inverse means opposite, and our inverse operations are plus, minus, times, divide, square, and square root, meaning that the opposite of plus is minus and the opposite of minus is plus. Just like that, the opposite of multiplication is division, and the opposite of division is multiplication, and the opposite of squared is square root, and square root squared, vice versa. So let's go through what inverse operations are and how we use them. Now, prior to this stage, you would have seen mathematical problems like this, where we have 3 plus box equals 7. Now, rather than having an x or a y value like we deal with today, you would have dealt with a box. So we know that what plus 3 equals 7. And we know that the answer here is 4. So we know that 3 plus 4 equals 7. Just like here, box minus 2 equals 10. What minus 2 equals 10? And we know that 12 minus 2 equals 10. For simple equations, this is an equation. For simple equations, we can use this method. But as the equations get more difficult, we need to ensure that we use inverse operations to do our questions. So let's have a look at this simple equation here, where rather than the box now, I have the x. So it says x plus 3 equals 12. Now remember, we said that we want to find the value of x. And here we can see that there are two sides to the equals. There is this side to the equals, and there is this side to the equals. We can call it the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Now on the left-hand side of the equals, we have x plus 3. And on the right-hand side, we have 12. So in order to get x by itself, I have to see what is with that x. And I can see there is x plus 3. So there's a plus 3 with the x. It's a positive 3. And as we know with our inverse operations, the opposite of plus is minus. So to get rid of this minus 3 here, positive 3 here, I can do minus 3 on this side and minus 3 on this side. Now, 3 minus 3 is 0, so they cancel out. And what am I left with here? X equals 12 minus 3. Now, we can further simplify this to x equals 9. 12 minus 3 equals 9, and that's my final answer there. Now, why do we do it on both sides? Why did I do minus 3 on both sides? The reason I did minus 3 on both sides is to balance the equation. So it's very important, whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. Now, how can I check if my answer is correct? So all I simply need to do now is pop the value that I found for x, or substitute the value I found for x back into that original equation I had here. So I had x plus 3 equals 12. Now I know that x is 9. Let's see. 9 plus 3 equals 12. So I know this is correct, and that's my correct answer. Now let's go through and do another quick example. Here I have x minus 6 equals 1. Now in order to get x by itself, I need to get rid of that minus 6. And the opposite of minus 6 is plus 6. And as we said before, we have to do it on both sides to balance the equation. Because I want to get x by itself, so I have to get rid of that minus 6. Minus 6 plus 6 cancel out, so I cross them out. I'm left with x equals 1 plus 6. 1 plus 6 is 7. Let's pop that 7 or substitute that 7 back into our original equation where we had 7 minus 6 equals 1. And we can see that our answer is correct. So always check your answer for an equation by popping it back in. We call these one-step equations. In our other videos or later on, you'll learn how to do multi-step or two-step or different types of equations. Let's move along, and I'm going to give you a chance to try this yourself. So just pause the video, try this on a paper yourself, and I'll go through the answers. Okay guys, so you should have already have finished these. Let's quickly go through this. I need to get a by itself, so I have plus 3. The opposite of plus 3 is minus 3. I do that on both sides to balance the equation. A equals 6 minus 3, which is 3. Here, x minus 2 equals 10. I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to get rid of the minus 2 on that side. In order to get rid of the minus 2, I have to plus 2 on both sides. Plus 2, they cancel out. I'm left with x equals 10 plus 2, which is 12, as your final answer there. Here, y minus 9 equals 1. I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to try and get rid of the minus 9 there. So the opposite of minus 9 is plus 9. I do it on both sides to balance the equation. They cancel out. Y equals 1 plus 9, which is 10. Hopefully, you got all three of those right. Now that we've dealt with addition, or sorry, plus and minus, or addition and subtraction, let's go on to division and multiplication. So, simple equations involving division and multiplication. To begin with, we need to go back to algebra so that we can understand the syntax or the way we write certain things. Firstly, there I have 6x. What does 6x mean? What does that actually stand for? 6x stands for 6 times x. In between here, there's a secret times symbol. So it's very important to understand that when we have a number and a pronumeral, there is a multiplication in between. Here, in example 2, I have x over 3 as a fraction. We know that that x over 3 is x divided by 3. So I can also write this as x divided by 3. It's important to know these two forms or syntaxes in order to do our questions with multiplication and division. Okay, let's go through an example. Example 1, 2x equals 6. Now remember, 2x is 2 times x. And the opposite of times is divided by. That's right. So I can write divided by in two ways. I like to write it as a fraction, but you can either do this to get rid of the 2, because I want x by itself. I can write divided by 2 on both sides. That is correct. Or I could also write over 2, which is the same thing. Now, when I write over 2 or divided by 2, that 2 and 2 cancels out. I'm left with x equals 6 divided by 2. And I know that 6 divided by 2 equals 3. Let's go through another multiplication question here. 5x or 5 times x equals 20. And I know that the opposite, or to get rid of the multiplication of the 5, is to divide by 5 on both sides. The 5 and 5 cancel out. I'm left with x equals 20 divided by 5, which equals 4. So remember, the opposite of multiplication is division. Now let's go through some division questions here. I have y divided by 2, or y over 2 equals 10. Now remember, the opposite of division is multiplication, or the inverse of division is multiplication. So I can get rid of this 2 here by timesing or multiplying both sides by 2. In doing that, that cancels out. I'm left with y equals 10 times 2, which is 20. That's my final answer. Here I have c divided by 4. C over 4 equals 2. In order to get the c by itself, I need to multiply, because the opposite of division is multiplication. Whatever I do on one side, I must do on the other side in order to balance it out. These two cancel out. I'm left with the answer as c equals 2 times 4, which is 8. Just like we did in our previous equations, we can always substitute these values back in order to find out whether we have the correct answer or not. Hopefully that gives you a good understanding of simple equations. If you have any questions, please comment below. Thank you very much.